Well, I want to give the background and purpose of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Pennsylvania's Early Intervention Program, or what we call the EIP, was designed to offer a preemptive step for municipalities who feel as if their financial situation, while not yet formally declared distressed, are realizing difficulties and seek to improve their financial position. The EIP supports municipalities by offering grants that can be used to fund costs associated with hiring an independent financial consultant to prepare a 3 to 5 year financial plan and management review of their municipality. The city had an EIP Phase 1 prepared in 2005 and an update to the plan, or EIP Phase 2, in April of 2013. The EIP 2 outlined short and long-term financial, managerial, and economic development strategies for the city to consider implementing to possibly strengthen our financial capacity. The plan also set forth the city's top 3 financial priorities. 1, stabilize the existing tax base. 2, balance expenditures and revenues. And 3, support existing city departments with technology and contracted services in the short run. One of the actions proposed to assist with stabilizing the existing tax base was to submit an EIP Phase 3 to specifically address economic development in the city. The city subsequently was approved for an EIP 3, and we launched our economic development planning process with a national economic development consultant, Fourth Economy. The company is based in Pittsburgh, and the firm's qualifications, past performance, innovative strategies, and concise reporting are quite remarkable. Fourth Economy has assisted communities of all sizes, helping them to identify their unique value proposition and creating actionable plans designed to capitalize on those strengths for a stronger economy. They recently assisted with a regional economic development collaborative in the Red River Valley of North Dakota and Minnesota, and created an economic development strategic plan for the state of Rhode Island, and then they came to the city of Lebanon. Prior to meeting with the city's project team, which consisted of Melissa Quinones, Community Development Director, Melissa, you want to give a wave? Michael McKenna, our Economic Development Intern, and myself, Fourth Economy conducted initial research to better understand our recent industry trends, demographics, and the market Lebanon serves. Fourth Economy's initial observation was that we have some unique resources and qualities to leverage. A kickoff meeting was held in October of 2014, and the consultant provided a project overview and timeline. The project was broken down into 3 phases. Phase 1 was the economic analysis. Where are we now? This phase included analyzing the economic structure and conducting a competitive analysis. Phase 2 was the economic development, identification, and prioritization. What direction should we go? This phase included reviewing the information gained from the roundtable discussions and identifying primary opportunity areas. And the third phase was the strategic plan. How do we get there? This phase included developing a marketing strategy, an economic development strategy, and an action plan. This meeting also included providing our consultant with a city tour and site visit. At about the same time we kicked off the process, the city appointed a steering committee to review and provide feedback on plan development and content. At this time, I personally want to thank each and every member of the steering committee for the time you invested in this project. And if anyone's here from the steering committee, if you could please stand up. Cindy? Great. Awesome. Again, it is important that any strategy and investment priorities address our city's needs, builds upon our asset base, and is supported by our residents and businesses. This is one reason why it was so vital to collect key stakeholder input through both survey administration and roundtable discussions. This input was obtained in December. The survey gathered information from residents and businesses on how we can grow Lebanon. The roundtable discussions were broken out into 3 working group discussions. Key issues, challenges, and investment opportunities relating to economic development were discussed at each group. And I see several of you here that were a part of the roundtable discussions, so I thank you for your time as well. The first group consisted of real estate, developers, and bank representatives. The second working group represented economic development partners, and the third group represented industry. The last 2 months have been exciting. Fourth Economy pulled together their research, including the stakeholder input, and then created an economic development strategy with priorities and action steps that will provide an opportunity to define and grow Lebanon for future generations. So please join me in showing our sincere appreciation to Fourth Economy for their commitment to this project. The city is quite impressed with the results, and I am confident that you will be as well. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce from Fourth Economy, Rich Overmoyer, President and CEO, and Steve McKnight, Vice President of Community and Market Assessments. Gentlemen?
We're about the same height, I think, so that's it. Over. Good morning, everyone. Really thank you for the opportunity to be here, and really want to thank the mayor, again, for the opportunity to work with the city and with many of you in this room, and we appreciate the time and the ideas that you were able to share with us. Hopefully you'll see the fruits of that labor as we go through the slides today. I really wanted to begin, I'm kind of the color commentator here today, so really what I want to talk about is a little bit about the context that this plan is being launched under. I think it's really important here, this idea about Grow Lebanon, and really the next slide here about the time is now. I think in communities like Lebanon and communities like this around the country, the time really is now for us to step up as individuals, as public officials, as private investors. The time really is now. I'm going to present a few slides about why I think that is the case. Some of these may be depressing, so close your eyes if it gets too bad for you. But there's some information about Pennsylvania that I find alarming. I'm hopefully going to raise a rallying cry that, again, the time is now for us to come together and do something about it. One thing in terms of context, at one point in time I was a state official. I worked at the Department of Community Economic Development as a deputy secretary. And so while we're a national firm and get to go to strange places like North Dakota and Rhode Island and places like that, at the end of the day, my heart is here at home, here in Pennsylvania. And so certainly places like Lebanon, we took very seriously in terms of how we can help you. And the reason for that is, again, a couple stats that aren't so good. First of all, if you look at really where, hopefully you guys can see this, but if you look at where Pennsylvania is in terms of job growth, we've really, for a while there, we were making good strides and improving and starting to rise into the top 10 in job growth around the country. But unfortunately, over the last few years, we've dropped quickly. We're back to about 48, 49, even 50, depending on which data source you're looking at. And so really right now, our economy is in the tank when you look at sort of what we're doing in terms of job growth. And certainly in terms of what you think about in terms of future economic opportunity for all of us and for our kids. The second note is also looking at in terms of where we are in terms of overall job growth. It's also slowing down. I mean, again, these two things relate, but the one thing that's also concerning is while the rest of the country is starting to rebound, or was rebounding from the recession, our pace of growth started to slow down. A lot of times we pat ourselves in the back saying we didn't have the hyper growth, and so we didn't have the crash as quickly. But again, when you look at these numbers, it's pretty depressing in terms of where we are in terms of overall numbers of jobs being created. Obviously, there are some bright spots. I mean, the shale industry is having some benefit in the state, but even there, we're not sure that we're seeing the benefits as much as people had hoped for. And so something's got to be done in terms of how we think about the types of investments we're making and the way that we're thinking about supporting businesses and the job creation opportunities. Another somewhat depressing stat is looking at the future. I mean, obviously, everybody talks about talent as being the big driver of economic success for any community in the future. And one of the things, this is just really looking at bachelor's as a proxy. I also want to stress that it's not just bachelor's, but also things like certificate programs, any kind of credential. That one of the areas that we see is the slippage again in Pennsylvania. A decade ago, we were amongst the top around the country. Again, we're seeing a slippage because a lot of our students and our talent are going elsewhere. They're leaving our communities and finding prosperous opportunities elsewhere. And so they're taking their degrees with them. Again, so that's an area that for the future it spells an issue that we've got to worry about. And obviously, places like here at the college hopefully are doing good things in training our next generation. And that will continue. We just have to figure out how to retain them here with opportunities. The next area is population growth. And this is something that really over the last year, I mean, I've become really, I guess, a disciple of thinking about how population relates to economic opportunity. When you start looking around the country at places that have attracted population, either because of natural resources or because of the economy is just booming, you really see, this opportunity around economic churn and higher GDP and higher median wages. The problem in places like Pennsylvania is we've either been stagnant, some communities, some counties have lost population. Fortunately, Lebanon, in the city especially, has actually seen a growth, and you'll hear a little more of the stats on that in the report. But overall, in Pennsylvania, again, we're seeing the stagnation, which also leads directly to economic stagnation. And so, at the end of the day, we have to start thinking about how do we make Pennsylvania more interesting for people, individuals, to want to come and live here. Obviously, they need a job, but these days, a lot of jobs are being created by individuals just falling in love with the community and figuring out what they're going to do for a job. We've been doing a lot of research around this population called the 1099 workforce. And in many places, you see as high as 30% of the new jobs being created in the city being 1099 workers. So they're individuals with a skill. They're selling that skill someplace else around the country, around the world, but they're choosing to live in a place because of the quality of that place, access to amenities, access to culture. It's something we have to think about in Pennsylvania, of how do we reinvent our communities. And in many cases, we don't have to go far. There's a lot of core assets in our communities, and certainly Steve will echo that here in Lebanon, we saw a lot of the kinds of things that young professionals, the millennial generation, are looking for. They're here. I think we just have to tell the story in a lot of these communities. One of the other things that's concerning us quite a bit, especially in Pennsylvania, is this idea of, again, the skills mismatch or lack of skills. We're seeing that there are certainly manufacturing jobs, and we're hearing that here in the community, that there are manufacturing jobs that it's very difficult to fill. I was talking to an employer that's hiring 500 people. He's probably going to screen 1,000 people just to get about 100 of those. So kind of a 10-to-1 ratio in terms of how many people you have to screen to get an employee. So if you look at that forward, that's a lot of cost to an employer that somehow the system's not working for them. And so it's something that we've got to really figure out, both as communities and then certainly as a state, in terms of what's the problem here. I don't think there's an easy solution because a lot of people have been talking about this for a while, but the solution is going to happen in communities like Lebanon, and so I think there's an active conversation that needs to happen here. And then finally, also part of the reason I think that this number here, looking at the manufacturing job loss, I think we're seeing around the country in pockets where we're working that manufacturing is quickly on the rise again. You're seeing a lot of smaller footprint shops, things like additive manufacturing and 3D printing is really changing the nature of what manufacturing looks like, and really how quickly you can prototype and bring new products into the marketplace. Again, I think we have a lot of smaller manufacturers here in Pennsylvania that don't have ready access to those tools and the technology, and again, certainly the talent. And so there's something here that I think we've got to think about is how do we support the manufacturing base, and that's going to be obviously critical here in Lebanon with the strong manufacturing base that you have. So I guess that's the depressing news. Okay, everybody's really sour-faced and yeah, great. Okay, so I'll try to cheer you up a little bit. I think one of the things that we've been traveling all over the country, and we had the pleasure through a project we were working on of visiting pretty much all the top 20 high-growth high-growth cities around the country. So these are places, and they're places not just high growth, but they're places that have transformed. So they've been like Pennsylvania, they've been like the communities of Pennsylvania. They've seen dramatic decreases in jobs and economic opportunity. And at some point in time, the community, people like you, sitting around the table said, enough's enough. We're not going to let that happen anymore. And so they started coming up, they started talking about what's the plan? How do we get out of this funk that we're in? How do we become less reliant? In a couple of cases, they were heavily reliant on the energy industry, places like Denver and Austin, Texas, and they went through the peaks and the valleys of that economic opportunity, and they decided that's enough. We have to have a much stronger balance. And so there's some lessons learned that we saw, and in addition to those 20 that we talked with leadership in each one of those communities, probably over the last couple of years, we've also done similar work, probably about 100, maybe close to 200 at this point. Other communities have sort of figured out how to rebound and how to restructure their economies and their communities. So the first area that we saw across the board is a bold vision. And again, it's something that's probably intuitive that yes, you have to have a vision, but I think this idea that it's bold, that really sets a plan and really sets sort of a goal that's much higher than just an incremental, like, look, yeah, we're just going to try to get back to where we were. We wanted to recreate sort of what we once had. These communities really thought much bigger. Places like Denver said, we want to be a global city. At the time, you could drag race down in downtown Denver in the middle of broad daylight during a work day. You could drag race your car. That's how bad it was in these places. But they said, we want to be a global city, and so they set out to do that. And obviously, you think about these places now, and you're like, sure, Denver's a great city. They weren't that way back in the late 1980s, early 1990s. One of the other places here was Manhattan, Kansas. It's a smaller community. It's actually where K-State is, which has really grown over the last few years. But even that university has seen peaks and valleys because of leadership and the role that the state's played in terms of investment. And so it was one of the few universities that had mass layoffs back in the 90s. And also this community also has some military installations not far from it. And they realized that they were totally dependent on a lot of public, federal funding basically as a result of that. And so their strategy, their bold vision was we need to make it a better place to live. And their economic development initiative became creating parks and swimming pools for their community. It seems simple, but it was the kinds of things that when they reached out to the community, they were completely missing. There was no recreational activity. They're in kind of an interesting area environmentally, but once you get outside of that community, there was nothing to do. And so to make a better quality place, their bold vision was we need to make a healthier community. The next area is the support by a broad civic infrastructure. I think the one thing that, certainly in Pennsylvania and places like Lebanon, and as we see around the country is there's not one organization that's going to change the dynamic that's happening. It takes everyone. It takes this shared vision, really buying into that, whatever that bold vision ends up being, those strategies end up being, and really creating the broad civic infrastructure to support it. A lot of times, and we do this, we go into a community and you see there's 100 plans that have been done in the community, but no action has been taken on those plans. That's a problem. I mean, it's easy to plan, it's easy to sit around and come up with ideas, but tasking a civic intermediary, a civic organization, to then go do it, and making sure that they have the resources and the capacity to do it are critical. And that's something as you see the plan rolling out today, it's something to really think about. Who are those civic leaders? Obviously, the mayor being the prime cheerleader for the community is going to play a significant role, but all of you in this community have to play a role in supporting the future in the plan that's here. The final thing is, next one is regional and nonpartisan. Again, no community is in isolation. I think, one of the things you have to think about is where are you weak in certain areas? Is it recreation? Is it other business opportunities, and who do you partner with to make yourself stronger? And so obviously throughout this region with Lancaster and Reading and Harrisburg, and you've got some interesting players, some organizations and some capacity there that you can tap into. And so that's important to think about. I think the other thing is, and not to get political, but the one thing that was really intriguing to me is, again, we talked to 200 leaders this summer of all these cities. They never brought up any politics. It was really about the community. It was about their families. It was about their kids coming back. Politics was not even mentioned. And so that's something to think about is these issues sometimes are sticky. I mean, sometimes they are politically unpopular to take an approach on a certain initiative or to invest in a certain project. But sometimes it takes that ability to do that, to have to provide the political cover at times for an investment that may not be popular, but it's going to give to the greater good. So you've got to think about that as you're going through and coming up with these kinds of strategies and recommendations. And again, this idea around industry and quality of place. I think I call myself a reformed economic developer a lot of times because I was part of the team that helped try to recruit all the bio industry to Pennsylvania. And we had some great success back in the day. But I think the more I've been consulting, it's become much more about the quality of place. It's one thing to try to lure that big company in or try to help a company grow. But if there's not a place for their workers that they want to participate in the community, that they want to live, that there's amenities, that there's good schools, that there's a culture there, you need to have all those things. And so these days, economic development and quality of place are completely linked. And I think there's more and more communities are becoming enlightened and thinking about how do those strategies come together? How do those civic organizations come together to create a shared plan? And so it's something that's important. I think the example here is Nashville that we had in the work that we've been doing. And Nashville's an interesting place. Again, it was an area that had been crushed by the energy industry for a period of time. But many of you probably know Nashville now as the music capital. I mean, having a TV show doesn't hurt. But again, that's all been building. I mean, it's been a plan that they had to embrace what was theirs: culture, which was the music industry, and a very entrepreneurial healthcare sector. Those two things, when they sat down and actually figured out those two things actually related, their plan actually became, again, so successful that they are what they are today, and have really, in a sense, basically since they created their plan in the 1990s, have doubled their population and their economic growth within the community. And the final thing is just action-oriented and accountable. Again, as consultants, we love to do plans. We love to make a few bucks, coming into a community doing a plan. But really, we're so focused these days on really making sure that they're actions that are tactical, practical, and something that somebody has ownership of. And so I think as Steve goes through today, you'll hear some of those ideas and obviously some of the ownership and some of the things that are already underway. I think the other thing is accountability. As these plans are adopted, again, whether it's the growth plan or other plans that are adopted in the community, hold each other accountable. Create forums for conversation about what's working in the plan, where you're meeting the benchmarks, and what's not, and have an open, active conversation about that. Again, not to be critical, but really to create buy-in across the community to figure out, again, if things are going well, great, how do we do more of that? And if you need help, how do we kick in and help? I think that's important to think about these plans, because that gives them life. It allows them to be something that's an actionable idea and an actionable plan, and that's the only way that you're going to get to success. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Steve, who's going to actually get into the plan.
I think you can see that we're passionate and excited about the work that we do and the best practices that we can bring back. And I think as we moved through this process and the mayor saw that I was very excited, I kept bringing back the vision. I kept saying, I think you guys are really on to something here. I mean, all of the elements are present to make this plan successful because concurrently we were working on these projects nationally. And I kept bringing back, I kept saying, you've got the stakeholders, you've got the pieces that are a part of this that can really make this happen. And the mayor was excited about that, and I kept saying, we're really, we think that what we're learning nationally here can be applied to this plan, and we're anxious to see it move forward. The mayor mentioned in the very beginning, yeah, we work in all these places nationally on statewide projects and such, but Rich and I were talking last evening, and we said, really the future growth trajectory, I think, for this nation is really found in our smaller communities and our smaller towns. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we are looking at the trend, we are looking at where the millennials are moving, we're looking at the qualities that are really driving economic growth nationally, and we're finding that all of those are present in our smaller communities. And when you look, there's been some research done in recent years of total economic output and in terms of geography, where is it coming from? And it's really coming from all of our smaller communities and all of our smaller towns. Yes, you hear about the big urban centers, but really there's many more smaller communities that have the manufacturing base, the high-tech base, the colleges and the universities and the assets that really come together. So we think the action is here, and the center of it is really here. What's going on? Are things moving? Am I bumping something? Stand by. Okay. Sorry. I'll be very careful. It's me, Rich. There's a joke in our office that I am the technology confounded one.
It's a joke. It's a fact.
Yeah, no, it is a fact. It gravitates towards it.
I think this is a design flaw. What do you guys think?
Okay, so the other key point in this, and then my job here is to sort of walk you through the structure of the plan and what went into it. But it is a really fundamental point that as you hear the vision and the mission and all the priorities and action, the key word in all of this is action agenda. This is not what we consider to be a strategic plan or the idea of what traditional strategic plans are, and that they sit on a shelf and they get dusty. But the mayor really has laid out a vision for this plan that it is one that engages all of you in this room, and events like this are very much reflective of what this plan is all about. Bringing together a real cross-collaboration of higher ed, the college, the technical schools, the community colleges, industry, and in the public sector, to make this work. So you're going to see a lot throughout the presentation about action and what's happening. And I can tell you, and I mentioned this last night, that at several points during this process, Once a priority was identified and a clear pathway forward, and we knew it was going to end up in the plan, the mayor began executing on it immediately. So by the time this thing went to print, we estimate that 40 to 50% of the action items are already underway and at work, and I'm sure many of you are engaged in some way on those projects. So this is very much an action agenda, and that's why it's called that. So I'll go ahead and dive in and highlight a few of the sections here, and then I'll turn it over to the mayor, and I think we have some time for some Q&A here at the end too. Excuse me, I'm suffering majorly from allergies at this point, so bear with me. So you heard a little bit about the process. The mayor highlighted a few of the items and activities that went into this. There were site visits, there were surveys and interviews and independent data gathering that we as a Fourth Economy team put together. And there were several working group meetings to collect that information, and that period went from October to May, and again, that corresponded with a lot of the regional cities initiative that Rich highlighted that we were conducting, and it was really fortuitous that we learned about those things and brought them here to this plan. So I want to start off by highlighting the vision. And again, what you're going to see here in this presentation is really just a snippet, although I'm going to dive into some of the action items. The full report will be available on the website, on the city's website, and you can download it in the PDF format. And there's a ton of information in this report. I'm holding the executive summary now, and there's even a fuller, larger report that contains all of the data background and such. But I want to just pause a moment, because all of that process, all of the input went into creating a vision. We were able to distill all the priorities and all the actions into three major buckets, and I'll just pause a moment and read that. A destination. Lebanon City is a vibrant and unique destination city, a city with a strong urban center to which people and businesses throughout the region and beyond will live, work, and play. So this idea that you're really defining the city of Lebanon as a destination city with attractions and a very unique aspect to it to bring both businesses and residents to the city. There's actions and priorities related to that. A community. Lebanon City is a welcoming, safe, and active city with high-value housing options, educational pathways, and recreational opportunities for all its residents and their lifestyles. And this really gets to Rich's point about the quality of place. What all goes into that? You have to think about all the assets and how they work together and who represents those assets, and are they of the highest quality and relevant to the folks that are looking to relocate and invest in your area. And are you bringing together all of the diverse cultures? There's just some very rich, diverse cultural changes happening here in the city, and that's a positive. And how do you leverage that for greater investment and greater color in your city? And finally, a place to learn and work. Lebanon City creates an environment that encourages new businesses and job growth across all sectors and skill sets, accelerating employment opportunities in businesses large and small. Lebanon is unique in the sense that you do have a few large manufacturers that are legacy industries and they've been here a long time and they're continuing to do well, but you also have a very large number of micro businesses. I mean, that's your largest employer base, or those that are less than 10 employees. Those are the high-value drivers, not only here in Lebanon, but nationally. So small business is really the backbone of it. So thinking about ways in which you can grow that and understand what the 1099 workforce is and how do you attract them here is really part of that equation, because population growth does happen through employment opportunities, whether it's a traditional pathway or if it's in the new growing 1099 independent contractors. So a clear vision's been lined out here, and again, we relate each priority and action item to this overall vision. And I think too, knowing now that later on this afternoon you're going to be going into some workshops, I mean, there's definitely some elements that in this plan that you can take away, and hopefully it will seed some of that thinking and conversation for the broader regional discussion that you're going to have later. Excuse me. There is some rigor here, right? So we had to lay some foundational data just to understand, what are the trends, what, are there any uh-ohs or positives that we really need to look at in the data itself. Rich mentioned, Pennsylvania's data points are on average, decreasing, and there's definitely a gap there and some challenges. But here in Lebanon, there's bright spots. population growth has been growing, and a lot of that is coming from an immigrant population. And again, how do you tie that into a positive? How do you engage that group and understand sort of where the role for all the new residents coming in to the area can play, and how can they invest? You're going to hear later about some investment opportunities in projects. There's some significant